businesses that have drive-throughs, the stacking and the requirements that go into an approval for a site plan for a drive-through can be quite complicated. And what we're now seeing, which was really exacerbated by the COVID, is typical drive-through sort of arrangements are not, they're old hat in essence. You go to the restaurant, you order at one window, you complete your transaction at another window, you pick up your food at another place in the drive-through line. We have a lot of businesses that are coming in where the transaction is already completed. You do it on an app, and all you're looking to do is have an entry point that is the exchange of the product. The ordering, the financial transaction has already been completed. So being able to efficiently service these new businesses and these new builds that are coming in, trying to do it with outdated ordinance and outdated requirements for stacking and lanes and things. Again, they get very detailed and somewhat, you can overlook them very easily. Our planning team is really on top of these things, and I was really proud to see the detail that goes into, an audit of our existing ordinances and requirements. So great things coming out of planning. Most notably is our master plan, which will be sent out to neighboring communities for review. As I mentioned to you previously, there's that 63-day window where neighboring communities can make amendments, suggestions, and things to our plan. But it really is quite incredible. That'll be something for the new board to finally approve, just because the timeline doesn't allow it to be handled by our term. But great things on the horizon. Just wanted to update the board on that. Thank you.
Thank you. A couple of real quick ones. The census. Couldn't be prouder of Macomb County. #1 in the entire country for response rates for communities or counties with over 500,000 people. That equals real dollars to our county, and I'm equally as impressed with Chesterfield Township's response. Our final self-response rate was 83.9. Our last year's rate was 76.2, which is or 2010 rate. That'll result in real dollars from federal government and from in revenue sharing. Anyone who speaks at the podium tonight, there's wipes up there. I would ask you to wipe the podium down after you speak, and there will be time given to make sure the podium gets wiped down prior to people using that. If you could do that, it's kind of like at the gym. You can touch a piece of equipment, wipe it down for me. And a real quick thing on COVID, we do know there is a uptick, and I would urge everybody to go to our website if they have any specific questions or concerns. There is a COVID link that has a ton of information dating back to day one. Our playbook is in there every single step of the way. I'm unbelievably proud of every member of this township. Dividends are being paid back now with how we have handled that, keeping our team and our community safe while still providing the service that we are charged with providing as essential employees. So if you could just remember, whoever approaches the podium, give it a wipe down before you leave. Assistant Director Johnson.
Good evening, Board. A few Public Works agenda items. The Water Assistance Program that we applied for about a month ago with the Department of Health and Human Services and in coordination with the Community Action Agency, we were able to help 94 communities. This is the one where they had like $26 million to use for the state. Our township was able to secure about $20,000 and help 94 residents or accounts with this money. So a lot better turnout than we planned for this project. So just want to let you know that update, that we did get some financial assistance for our residents using that program. The second thing, over the course of the summer, obviously due to the high waters, we had sewer plugs in 15 locations throughout our township along the water. Those have since been removed as of last Friday due to the heavy rains and everything that was kind of plagued us last weekend as well as this coming week, so as to avoid us having to be out and pumping all the water down because the water level has dropped about a foot. We were able to pull these plugs without having to flood anybody out at this current time. So now everything along the water is at lake level, so whatever happens is whatever lake level is at this current time. And the last thing will be We've been working diligently since our connection fee special board meeting on working with Attorney Siebert on these ordinance changes. We finally have them completed. So this week, I'll be sending out a memo with an email with all the attachments of the ordinances for your review. They are going to be coming to the November 10th board meeting, but I just wanted to give them out to you guys because there's 18 separate ordinances that are going to be changed. So I wanted to give you guys a heads up on that, so that way you guys can take a look, and I'll be reaching out to each one of you in case you guys have any specific questions, and then just probably do a brief overview and presentation at the board meeting on the 10th. But that's going to be coming to you guys on the 10th for the first publication of these ordinance changes. Are there any questions on those 3 items? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further department reports? And he's going to give him 1 minute, Director Kirsten, to give it a quick wipe down.
Water Department terms. Very happy to announce in January of this coming year, 2021, we will be resurrecting our Traffic and Services Unit. This unit was disposed of back in 2013-14 in light of all of the events, the complaints, residential complaints of speeding, and then the enhancement that we've done over the course of the last 4 years with our electronic speed signs. We now need to create a unit to manage and then also follow up with the enforcement side of that traffic sign, those electronic traffic signs. The other thing we've also needed to do is we had an increase in car crashes. Obviously, we meet one of the regions, the areas, high volume traffic crashes. So this unit will be dedicated Monday through Friday to serve that need within the police department. And as I said, it'll be up and running and with full capacity in January of 2021.
Thank you. Any questions for Director Kirsten from the board? Thank you very much. Long anticipated. I expect that to help out with the pedestrian front as well on some of our major thoroughfares. Thank you. Any further department reports? Moving on to item number 6 is the consent agenda.
All items under the consent agenda are considered routine by the board and will be enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of these items. If discussion of any items is required by a board member, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Public comments on the consent agenda items are permitted. A, approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of October 13th, 2020. B, approval of the agenda with addendum if necessary. C, approval of the payment of bills as submitted by the Finance Department.
Do I have a motion?
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda with one removal. And I'm operating from the most updated agenda which was given to us on 10/27, which already had the previous item 7D, but item 7A was postponed from the October 13th regular Township Board meeting, and that item was postponed to the 13th to afford the co-chair of the Cannabis Committee to weigh in on this issue and make a more comprehensive presentation. Given that Clerk Berry is out tonight, I would ask that we remove item 7A from the regular agenda, and I would ask for support in the passage of the consent agenda minus agenda item 7A from the agenda.
Motion by Trustee Joseph to approve the consent agenda minus item 7A. Is there support?
Support.
Motion by Trustee Joseph, support by Trustee DeMink. Discussion. Comments from the public on the consent agenda only. Motion by Trustee Joseph, support by Trustee DeMink to approve the consent agenda. We do have a public comment.
My name is John Spica. I have a question that relates to the consent agenda, and it's directly relates to the bill run So on page 2 of 10, under Department 265, Facilities and Operations, 101-265-975.000, it says Weber Park paddle in the amount of $16,214. Before we move on, I want this pulled and I want discussion, and I don't want it voted on until we know what the taxpayer is paid for there. And if the cost was associated with an original design change, then I have a problem with that. I mean, if we keep changing the design, what good is the original design to go with? And if these changes were related because it was a photo op, then I have even a bigger problem with that. So if you guys could pull that before you vote on it and let the taxpayers know what that money was for, I would appreciate it.
Any further comments from the public?
Michelle Merriweather. I just wanted to get some clarity on the Cannabis Committee report. So, I couldn't hear over there what you were saying. So with the Cannabis Committee report, are we saying that, I wasn't sure what we've postponed it twice, so I wasn't sure what exactly we were looking to do.
It's been removed from the agenda.
It's been removed totally, I couldn't hear. Okay, thank you.
Any further comments from the public? Questions from, or comments from the board, if there's any follow-up? We have a trustee, or motion by trustee Joseph, support by trustee Demink to approve the consent agenda as amended. Trustee Joseph.
Were you going to address any of those?
I was not.
Okay. I just wanted to address the issue with the Cannabis Committee. What I envision is bringing it back. The Cannabis Committee remains intact. The end of our term is not until the end of November. There will be an additional board meeting where this board post-election still meets, and I would like to conclude the Cannabis Committee report so that the new board coming in has a public sort of presentation of what we've done over the last 2 years. So it is my intention to bring that back for presentation at our meeting in November.
Any further comments from the board? I'll circle back around on the Weber Paddle Park. Very proud of this project. I know that there's a pretty concentrated effort from some for it to not happen. The invoice you're speaking about, JSS Macomb, is the final invoice to that to the contractor to do it. Job's under budget, is complete with a substantial grant from the DNR Trust Fund of $265,000 plus a substantial property donation. Couldn't be prouder of the fact that we got that project done for a very little amount of Chesterfield Township taxpayers' dollars, leveraging all the resources from trust funds. So project went very, very well. One last piece was coordinating to remove the pole, which was designed in the sidewalk. However, Comcast is sometimes a little unreceptive when it comes to removing that pole. That pole's removed. One final piece of slab will go in, and I would expect a phase 2 of that thing in the coming years to rock the shoreline, soften that shoreline along with paving that entire parcel. So that is the payment there that you are referring to, I believe, and I'll move it to Treasurer Lofato.
Since the subject was brought up, I checked with finance. We have not received any grant money on that project since the grants were starting to be assigned to Chesterfield Township since 2014. Not one dime yet. And since it was brought up, I'm kind of concerned because the grant had a stipulation of certain items that had to be there for us.
Point of information.
Trustee Vosberg.
I have no objection to having a discussion, but according to our rules, that would need to be separated from the agenda for discussion. That's-
You are correct.
Okay.
You are correct. Any further discussion from the board? We have a motion by trustee Joseph, support by trustee Demink to approve the consent agenda as amended. Deputy Clerk Niza, please call the roll.
Trustee Joseph?
Aye.
Trustee Demink?
Aye.
Trustee Anderson?
Aye.
Treasurer Lafata?
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti?
Aye.
Trustee Vosper?
Motion passes. Item 7A has been removed from the agenda. Item 7B.
Approve a recommendation by the Department of Public Safety to recognize Captain Michael Scalisi and his achievement of graduating from Staff in Command.
Director Kirsten, and
One of the things you allowed me to do when we became Public Safety Department, and one of the tasks that we undertook was to increase and enhance the training, not only in the police department, but also in the fire department. Over the course of the last 3.5 years, we've used Eastern Michigan University Staff and Command on this side for the fire service to offer to our command staff a higher level of education. And Eastern Michigan University, which offers a 10-month, 1 week a month program, is all-encompassing. It covers everything from fire ground command to administrative HR personnel issues to budgeting, management, and Mike is our most recent, Captain Scalisi is our most recent graduate, successful. It is a rewarding program, and I'm going to let Mike speak a little bit about it. And our plan is to continue this level of training throughout the fire department in the coming years. So, Mike, congratulations on that.
Thank you, Director Kirsten. As Director Kirsten mentioned, I had the opportunity to attend Eastern Michigan University's Fire Staff and Command School from February to October. We had a few glitches with COVID. As we all know, we had to make up some time. But it was a very rewarding opportunity that I had. With the advancement, it prepares you to advance and some personal development within your personal career to advance to the chief level of maybe this department or some other department. Hopefully it's here. Anyway, that being said, everybody had to do pick a project or a topic they were going to write on. I wrote my project on firefighter retention. Not that it's a problem, but more of a concern to try. We hire a lot of people, and sometimes they leave our department, so we addressed the issue of how to find some new, unique, and creative ways to keep people interested in staying here in Chesterfield. So, but I met a lot of great people. Probably my favorite part of the class was the networking. I got to meet people from all over the state, firefighters that are become interested in being chiefs in their departments, and from as far away as Alpena, Traverse City, Marquette. So they came from all different locations. The good thing about it is the networking, because if there's ever a question I have with somebody from another department, I could always lean on them, and vice versa. They can lean on me if I have some sort of expertise in that area. But anyway, I just want to thank Director Kirsten and Fire Chief Miller for investing into me and giving me this opportunity to attend this school. To the firefighters, men and women of the fire department, in particular my battalion, they've really stepped up and helped me to fill in when I couldn't be there. So, and they kept me out of trouble. And then, lastly, I'd like to thank my family and my wife Tammy for all the support during the class, while I was away at school or whatnot, and for everything she's done over the last 28 years of the craziness that comes along with being a firefighter's wife. Thank you.
Trustee Joseph.
One, I just want to say congratulations, Captain Scalisi.
Thank you, sir.
If I could just add a couple of things for the board and any residents that happen to be hearing your presentation tonight. When then Chief Kirsten and now Director Kirsten re-engaged with Staff and Command at Eastern, I was fortunate enough to go to one of the graduation ceremonies, and listening to the families of the participants. This is something you do after you work. You're not on vacation for 10 months. This is something you're driving out to Ypsilanti. Your coursework that is done online is done, at home, and your presentation that you have to give to your peers. And I was glad that you talked about firefighter retention. One of the things that you touched on was the networking and talking with graduates from Staff and Command. You have a class. You're identified by your class, and you have met peers from all over the state. And if you run into an issue in Chesterfield with something like drone, the utilizations of drones, the utilization of social media in your department, the utilization of keeping your tanks inventoried so that you can, every nuanced issue, I'm guessing somebody in your class did a presentation that you now have access to. And with a phone call or an email, you now have what would be a master's level thesis, almost like a dissertation, the amount of work that goes into that presentation. So I bring it up only because obviously it makes you a better captain, and there are skills that you now have that you will take for the rest of your career and probably friendships for life. But there is a huge benefit to the residents of this township for the cost of sending you to staff and command, because what you bring back in the way of knowledge is directly applicable. It's very, very portable. It's one of the best investments we make in terms of staff development is the staff and command there. And I'm glad that you participated. You do that with some degree of sacrifice to your family and your time, and your enhancement of your skills and the departments is commendable, and I appreciate the time you put into this, so thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Joseph.
Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor, and thank you, Captain, for all the work that you did on that.
Thank you.
And I appreciate, your initiative of wanting to do extra, and also to, for the whole department of wanting to continue improving everything we do. And I, for all the reasons already stated by the previous speaker, I can't say enough about networking, going to higher learning, anything we can do, because it benefits all of us, not just our own community, but all the communities that benefited from what you presented as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Vosberg.
Trustee Demink.
Captain Scalisi, congratulations.
Thank you,
I know it's a tough course. Several friends of mine on the law enforcement side have attended it, and I know it's a rough course, so congratulations and best of luck on your accomplishment.
Thank you, Trustee Demink.
Treasurer LaFata, I see your mic is on. I don't know if you wanted to speak on this item. Thank you.
Just real quick closing, just want to thank the board for being when we do stuff like this. You've been very supportive to us, and hopefully this will continue. I'll have more candidates come through in the coming months.
Thank you for your service, your sacrifice, and all you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Item 7C.
Approve a recommendation from the Department of Public Safety to purchase a new turnout gear for firefighters in the amount of $9,640.39 from, is it Dingy's Fire Company from GL number 205-340-941.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Trustee Joseph, support by Trustee Demink. Director Kirsten.
This is just firefighting gear. As we increase our staffing in the fire department with the part-time staff, we have to obviously outfit them. This pricing, just so you're aware, came from Mitten. We put the gear price out, request at an RFQ for pricing, and this was the lowest cost with the best equipment that we could get.
Questions for Director Kirsten? Comments from the public? You got one coming in behind you.
John Spica, I just want to make one comment that I think this is great. It's good to see this board, supporting our men and women in blue like you guys always do, and I think this is a good purchase, and I'm 110% behind it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the public? Motion by Trustee Joseph, support by Trustee Demink to approve item 7C as submitted. Deputy Clerk Nyza, please call the roll.
Trustee Joseph?
Aye.
Trustee Demink?
Aye.
Trustee Anderson?
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata?
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti?
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Item 7D.
Review of additional proposed changes to the Chesterfield Township Code of Ordinances and approval for all proposed changes.
Mr. Supervisor,
Trustee Vosberg.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the changes as set forth in the executed summary.
Motion by Trustee Vosberg.
Support.
Support by Trustee Anderson. And Clerk Greenia is here.
There we go. That better? So a couple weeks ago, we brought to you the start of this project. We're basically cleaning up the ordinance, and I gave to you folks in an envelope to go in your binder the second portion of it. Really, you've already made a lot of the substantive changes to the portions of the ordinance that are in this half. You did adopt, I believe, 3 new fire ordinances, the sign ordinance, some in traffic and vehicles, and there are a couple parts of this that were recommended for you to discuss at a later date to dive in deep to them. So I'm just hopefully looking for direction and authorization from you folks to submit all the changes that you approve and put them together in the packet, give them to general code, and then when we get the draft back, you will again look at it and make sure everything is satisfactory.
Thank you. Any questions for Clerk's Office? Trustee Anderson.
Just a quick comment here. The work product, Ms. Greeno, you put in here, quite extensive. Thank you again. Thank you.
Any further comments on the board? Questions from the public? You got one coming in behind you.
John Spica. Cindy, I want to thank you for the work. I just have one comment in regards to the change to the ordinance. Under bullet point number 5, which deals with political signs, I noticed that they made the change to 60 days, but in the change, they put that political signs need to come down 4 days after the election. So I'd like to see if we could increase that to 10 days, because elections are on Tuesday. 4 days wouldn't be sufficient in taking it down. So if we could make that change or maybe pull that item and wait on voting on that, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
If you would like to discuss, maybe I'm comfortable with you commenting on, we're not changing anything, we're not doing anything, we're codifying existing, and any change like that would require ordinance amendments down the road.
And
Maybe I just said it for you.
Yeah, I do believe that you folks did just address the sign ordinance not long ago.
Any further comments from the public? Motion by Trustee Vosberg, support by Trustee Anderson to approve item 7D as stated by Trustee Vosberg in her motion. Clerk or Deputy Clerk Nyza, please call the roll.
Trustee Vosberg?
Aye.
Trustee Anderson? Aye. Trustee Joseph?
Aye.
Trustee Demink?
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata?
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti?
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Item 7E.
Recommend the Township Board of Trustees to authorize engineering design services to Spalding DeDecker, SD, for the creation of the Annual Sidewalk Replacement Program in the amount of $18,500.
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Demink. Support by Trustee Vosberg. Mr. O'Connor.
Good evening. This is a request for the board to authorize Spalding DeDecker to initiate a sidewalk removal and replacement program. Jeremy with Spalding DeDecker is familiar with the project and is available to speak and answer any questions.
Questions from the board, and I'm sure Jeremy will give you any kind of an overview that you would like. Would you like to give a quick overview?
Sure. Yeah, this is a program to assist the township with creating a program that identifies, evaluates, and then goes through the assessment program to replace broken sidewalks throughout the township. So this is going to involve creating an administrative guide where you go through and create a schedule of when does inspection begin, when are letters sent out, when are postcards sent out, when are public notices sent out, et cetera. It's also going to help create the criteria of, you know, what are we replacing? Is it 1-inch lip, half-inch lip? How many cracks in a sidewalk require replacement, et cetera? The township ordinance has some of this documentation, but a lot of it is fairly vague, so this will help kind of dial that in and make it a little bit more transparent.
Maybe a quick one from me first. I know I usually like to speak last, but this is one piece of multiple pieces of a sidewalk program going through. So this is existing sidewalks. For our entire township. I believe it's going to be broken up into 6 segments under the proposal that's here. Ordinance is going to be looked at. We're basically setting up from scratch a sidewalk, a current sidewalk or existing sidewalk replacement program to deal with the lips that pop up and the repairs that pop up, and then the the funding mechanism associated with that. Not to be confused with the non-motorized master plan, which is making its way through planning as we speak, and gap closure programs and other grants to connect Chesterfield very substantially from a non-motorized path piece. So it's not the rest of those, it's not the new paths, it's not the gap program, it's not the non-motorized master plan, it's existing sidewalks program, just like Jeremy described. Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. It was part of the question I was going to ask. But also, I'm wondering, this report, though, this work will also help when put together with the other non-motorized paths and other things, right? That eventually we'll have documents and recordings of all the things that we see and need in the township, I'm asking.
Yes, and this is a vital, well, I maybe ask Jeremy, so I'll let Jeremy go with that.
No, absolutely. It would follow a similar program to what would allow you to close gaps. The township ordinance covers a lot of the same things, so it would be a very similar process.
And again, so especially if some grant opportunities become available, we have all this on our record so that we can immediately know it ties in with a particular grant.
Correct.
Thank you.
Trustee Anderson.
You guys had a question here. I know I supported the addition of engineer to our township payroll earlier in our term, and I'm wondering why we aren't utilizing the people we have on the payroll now instead of going outside to an outside vendor at a cost of $18,000+ plus. Why aren't we having our staff members perform this? Thank you.
Jeremy, if you maybe go through the GIS and the amount of work that's going to have to go into this program.
Right. Yeah, it's a little bit of a specialized program that we have a lot of experience in other communities, specifically dealing with the types of assessments, how the payments go out, as well as the GIS program. So part of what this program is putting together a GIS that identifies each location of sidewalk throughout the township, provides a picture, provides the defect that we identified, as well as in the past we've also utilized a hotline, a email address, et cetera, to kind of take some of the burden off of township staff when questions come in as to why did I receive an assessment, why is it that much, and why couldn't I just replace it myself?
Trustee or Treasurer LaFata.
If this is similar to some of the other ordinances in other municipalities, well, take for instance, my parents had a house in St. Clair Shores. The sidewalk cracks. They're given an option to have the township or the city pay for it or call their own contractor up and do it. And basically this was done through their code enforcement. They would come over and code enforcement would look and they would say that you need your sidewalk replaced. You've got X amount of days, months, weeks to do this, and you have an option. You can either pay a contractor to do it, you can do it yourself, or you can put it as an assessment on your taxes. I'm not sure that we're not adding some bureaucracy to this because we do have code enforcement, and I'm sure we're going to have the options to do A, B, C, and D. So I'm kind of not understanding how this really fits right now. Because if our code enforcement drive around and our inspectors go out and they see a piece of property that's damaged and needs to be replaced, I'm assuming they should be charting it down and we should be taking care of it internally before we expend $18,000. I'm kind of miffed. Try to explain that to me.
Yeah, no problem. So, I mean, I'm sure as everyone is aware, contractors are somewhat in low supply. We've dealt with this in other townships where when you send out a letter, they can't find a contractor to come and replace a single flag of sidewalk. And when they do, it's several $1,000s. So it's somewhat, when we put together a program, we can put quite a few different sidewalk segments together in one and provide an economy of scale. We've seen much better unit prices from the sidewalk when we package them together.
Well, commonly right now when you say that, when I've seen for some of our quotes for sidewalks, we're looking at $5 a square foot at 4 inches thick. And you're saying that we're going to tack another 25%, so that's like $6.25 a square foot. That's pretty reasonable to what outside contractors, if not less, right now. And then the same thing, if a couple neighbors join together and they got the same issue, they get their bang for the buck. So I'm still trying to rationalize $18,000 to do something that could be handled internally to the township. Thank you.
Trustee Joseph?
Yeah, just the, not to replow the field here, but as I'm looking over the proposal, there are a number of things that seem to be administrative before you can get to what it costs to replace a sidewalk. So in neighboring communities, if you watch neighborhood pages and you see, residents, Macomb Township recently had, I don't know how many resident Facebook posts where they would take a picture of the sidewalk in front of their house. It was marked with spray paint, and this only has 2 cracks, and the policy is, 1 crack, and it's only raised a half of an inch. So the first, before you can ever get to, one, are you replacing it, and then, how much is it? Is the township going to do it? Are you going to do it? You have to have, a set of rules that everyone is, and it seems to me that we have the ability to do that in-house. I'm just missing the part where we need to spend, 18.5 for you, no disrespect, but we have an engineer, and we have a great planning department, and we have an attorney that can help us partner with code enforcement. I get the GIS, but I do recall back, there was you don't have a lot of people on the payroll that are entry-level individuals that are out sort of, mapping these things. This is something I think we could do fairly well in our community with a collaboration between our engineer and our planning team. I just don't know the added value of, an additional, and I just disagree in terms of unless I'm missing it, but I disagree in the high specialty level associated with this project. I think we have the talent in-house, and really it's policy driven first, that we have to have a policy outlining what requires replacement before we ever get to how or who's going to do it and at what cost. That's an internal, to me, it's an internal something I think we could do in-house fairly easily.
Sure, yeah, and I think we talked through a little bit of the GIS integration, which is a little bit of a specialty, but we're also serving as somewhat of an advisor. We've been through this, we've seen the pitfalls on, going one way versus going another way, and that's really what we're trying to provide here. We're going to be integrating with planning and with engineering and getting the input directly from the township, but kind of helping guide that process a little bit and seeing through the issues that we've seen in the past.
Thank you.
Any further comments from the board? This is it's no secret, shouldn't be any secret that connecting our community and the lack of safe pedestrians and sidewalks has been a concern of mine and a vast majority of our township for quite some time. I'm very comfortable utilizing this vendor and a consultant to do this. And Mr. O'Connor, you're more than welcome to speak on this, but we do have, 400 miles of sidewalks at some point that are going to be, there's a lot. There's a lot more to this than just, hey, there's a 2-inch gap that, and then we do send letters out to deal with liability on our end and on the homeowners' ends. It's a lot to keep up with, and it's going to be a lot more to keep up with as time goes by. So having a program where we split the township up and utilizing Spalding DeDecker for that amount of financial investment for the substantial, and it is a ridiculous number what we're going to need to repair, replace, and connect Chesterfield moving forward from a non-motorized path standpoint. This is a minuscule amount, and I believe it is well worth the value for what we're going to get. Mr. O'Connor?
Yeah, there's horses for courses. The Spalding people would, interrogate the sidewalks, interrogate the streets, record all the data in GIS. They wouldn't be spray painting. I started here in 2018. This thing's always just been kicked around. This is an opportunity. Spalding has experience in doing this. It's an opportunity to get it and get it going and be done with the whole township in 6 years. So it is a lot of grunt work. It is a lot of what you have to walk the streets. You have to look at every flag of sidewalk. They record it in GIS. We don't spray paint. I don't think personally it's something that the township staff can do.
Further comments from the board before I bring it up to the public? Trustee Joseph.
The difficulty I have, again, and I don't want to go over it and over it, but one of the components of the SAW grant that I recall was it involved GIS type services. So you physically had people out in the community standing over a manhole cover. It would get plotted, it would get graphed, and then it's there forever, right? So we talked about it 2 weeks ago. Mr. Coddington was talking about cameraing and knowing now we got a better idea of how many linear feet of pipe we have because of that mapping, because of that GIS work. The problem I had with it several years ago is the contractor that was doing that, again, I think it was AEW that did it, but they didn't have anybody on their staff that worked for less than $40 an hour. And the fluorescent green vest standing over a manhole cover is not a high-skill job. It just wasn't. And when you looked at the amount of hours that went into what we paid somebody $40 an hour was management-level salary in the DPW. It wasn't economical. And, you know, I know we talk about every time we hire somebody, we'd like the wages to be higher, but we don't start anybody out in DPW at $40 an hour. So if a lot of this is simply standing out and inventorying where we have gaps and where we have breaks with an effective management team to, you know, handle those areas and send people out, I think we can do that a lot cheaper. Again, that's just, you know, I'm a part-time board member. This is what you do. If you're the engineer and you say this is beyond the man hours that we can do in DPW and engineering, then I'll vote for it. I don't think that it is, but if you're saying that your department can't handle it and this is the economic way to go, I'll take your word for it. But that's an expense that I don't know is high dollar, high skill level. It is a lot of time, certainly a lot of time. So that's really all I have to say on it.
Any further comments from the board before I bring Treasurer LaFata?
I'm trying to understand, Trustee Joseph mentioned the master plan, and the master plan supposedly has connecting sidewalks. And if this stuff needs to go in the master plan, and you know, it's going to have to go from Spalding DeDecker to Giffords and Webster to get put into the master plan. Wouldn't it just be better for one company? Now, we've got Giffords and Webster doing the master plan, and they're going to be laying out sidewalks and everything. So why, if we had to do GIS and everything else, why we wouldn't have the same firm that's putting it in? I'm just, you know, the more people we have touch something, the more money it costs the township. It's called bureaucracy. And I know our new, you know, person that's running for treasurer hates bureaucracy. So I'm just trying to understand why we would want to compound it. Like I said, more people that touch it, the more money it costs. You can't deny that. And it's got to go somehow in the master plan for us to understand how we're going to connect all these pathways and sidewalks. So that's just another reason why I don't think we should move forward with this until we think about it a little bit more.
Mr. O'Connor.
This isn't a sidewalk master plan. It is a removal and replacement of existing sidewalks. That's what this proposal is. Okay. The GIS is to collect data on faulty sidewalks. If there's a trip hazard, if there's wide cracks, if we're ponding water, that's what the GIS will be used for, to import that data. It's not a master plan.
The GIS is no more than having the address of the home or the commercial entity where the sidewalk.
No, it'll have the sidewalk located and the flags that need to be replaced in lieu of spray painting those flags. The GIS will collect that data. It'll be entered in for that address, these flags. Here's the defect, in lieu of spray painting the flags.
When our code enforcement goes out and they tag something, they tag it and a reason why. And if somebody goes out there and they tag it the sidewalk, the people are going to know what needs to be fixed. I mean, I could go out and look, I'm not a code enforcement, I could go out and look at a sidewalk and tell you whether it's dangerous, you're gonna break your ankle, and it needs to be fixed. And I won't charge you, you know, $100 an hour.
Trustee Vosberg.
I can't believe we're having this detail of a discussion. I see this as a plan, a type of, it's going to be to survey the entire township so that we will know all of these. Our own people could probably go out there and do the same thing, perhaps. I don't know if they would know how to put it all together in a type of software that can be used by everybody else. I don't know if we have that skill set. Maybe we do. They can be trained. The point is, it's going to take a lot of time. Whose time? Our own time or somebody else's time? It's going to take time, and it's going to cost a lot of money for our own people to do it at the expense of not being able to do something else. I think that the cost of this, $18,000, is a good deal, and we'll have a complete piece, a complete report when the whole thing is done, and we'll be able to tie it into other things that we want to do and that we do, and code enforcement can use the same information. I think we need to approve this. Thank you.
Thank you. Couple comments I'll make just to circle around. One is the discussion of when you use a subcontractor versus when you use in-house. And there is, once you take a fully burdened township employee and you add payroll taxes and all the benefits and everything else, there's a point when it makes sense to use subcontractors, and it makes sense to either hire people for a program in-house or to utilize existing. I'm comfortable with this. This is why it was, when it was pitched to the Ways and Means Committee, we kind of troubleshot a lot of this. The value that this will bring and how far behind we are just as a community. This has kind of been my ask for 4 years, you know, and they're coming one at a time now. I'm sure Treasurer LaFata, you pointed some of them out that are liabilities to us and liabilities to the homeowners as well. We are so far behind. This program should have been intact, or some kind of a very solid sidewalk program should have been intact 20 years ago, and we wouldn't be fighting from behind. Doing this in-house, I don't think is feasible. It's been an ask for as long as I can remember here in an issue, and not having this program, I think, will keep pushing us behind on connecting our community and getting the sidewalks and the connectability and pedestrian safety that we need. So I'm comfortable with this. I think it's a vital piece of the puzzle. If the board chooses to move forward with this vendor, we do. If the board chooses to, you know, keep it in-house and keep plugging away, we'll find resources to do so. I may be back at some point, or I guess I may not be back depending on what happens here in a week, but I'm sure that the department will be back with different options moving forward, because the status quo is not an option for me, but I understand everyone's concerns. I think I'm gonna bring it up to the public before I go around for round 3. Anyone from the public want to speak on agenda item 7E?
Michelle Merriweather, I just wanted to state that I am in full agreement with this team in regard to getting the $18,500. They need the money, and to take a look at it, if it was something that could be done by our team, I think it would have already been done. So why not just give them the money they need? As was stated by Trustee Joseph, they are the engineers. They know what we need. And unless you're an individual that's out walking in the neighborhoods and walking the main ways a lot, which I talk to residents that are, we may not even know some of the areas that they may encounter in some of the bad sidewalks. So I think if we have engineers that are specifically engineered to know what to look for, that would be better for our residents and make sure that the job is done more effectively. Thanks.
Take any further comments from the public? And thank you for wiping the podium down. Let's see if I can shut that. Okay. Any? Seeing no further, I'll bring it back up to the board. Trustee Joseph.
Yeah, Mr. Supervisor, before you went out to the community, if you're comfortable with it, I'm okay with it. Okay, I'll just put it that way. If you're saying that Ways and Means looked at the cost-benefit analysis of in-house versus Spalding DeDecker, and it's a better fit to go outside, then I'm okay with that, but none of that Ways and Means cost benefit. So all due respect, Trustee Vosberg, when you say you're not sure what it costs, neither am I. So I do recall that the GIS-related portion of this, when we did the SAW grant, there was nobody that worked at AEW less than $40 an hour. We don't have that hourly scale here, which is what I was asking for. So the other thing is, we, to the speaker that came to the podium, we brought in an in-house engineer several years ago specifically for project management. That was a six-figure line item to bring those in. So I think it's entirely appropriate to inquire whenever a project comes in, is this something within the scope of our in-house engineer? That's why we brought the engineer in. Which is why I prefaced the question, which is, if you say that it's more cost-effective to go out, I'll accept that. You are the expert there. But at some level, I think what should make its way to the board for consideration is the determination from Ways and Means, because if you've already done that, simply include it. Simply include it so that it's very clear that the product we're paying outside contractors to do. But in terms of the, you're paying, there's no degree in sidewalk engineering. It's not like you're hiring experts who are engineers in sidewalks, as one of the speakers mentioned. It's not, there's no sidewalk engineer. The question becomes, is there a mechanism to do it in-house? We talked about it when we were pouring the concrete for the pad, when Mr. Sonberg was here talking about the value of doing it in-house. Whenever we have the skills and talent, and certainly we do, if there's an alternative argument that says this is a slightly nuanced specialty, I respect that, but I'd like to see it in black and white in the Ways and Means report. So again, those who were involved in that, if they are comfortable with it, I'm comfortable, but I don't think it's a futile effort to continue to talk about the cost-benefit analysis and the rate of return, the rate of the investment we made for an in-house engineer should be the first place we go, and that should be the presenting party that says this is 18.5 is a great deal. This is why. This is how many hours. This is what our people would charge. This is what the legacy costs associated with ours, and this is what we can do when we contract it out. That's valuable information. So I don't want to forego that exercise when we determine these. But again, if you've been there, you're comfortable with it, I am as well.
Thank you. Any further? Trustee DeMink.
I'm in favor of this program. I think it's great because we need to do something. There's a lot of problems with the townships. When we went out to engineering firms, we hired 3. So it's not just, I know there was a lot of confrontation between members on this board, between engineering firms. So we all interviewed the 3 different firms. We went with 3 firms and we broke it down on that. So, I mean, I'm fine with this. I'm fine with Spalding, and that's why we have department heads like Mitch. I mean, we all have our fortes and our expertise. David, you have yours. Hank, you have yours. Dan has hers. Paul has his. Kathy has mine. I have mine. We all have our expertise, but we can't be an expert in every field. And I feel that this, when we go to the engineer, this is Mitch's thing. He advised us. He thinks this is a great idea, and the amount of information that's going to be received, the representative from Spalding's here, I'm fine with the program.
Treasurer Lafata.
One of my expertise is efficiency. And to be efficient, you have to be 100% utilized. And right now, I'll guarantee you that between our code enforcement and some of the DPW workers, we're not 100% utilized. And until you're 100% utilized in a business situation, you don't go outside and use a outside contractor. It is not good business. It doesn't make sense. So you might be an expert in something, but when it comes to efficiency, utilization is the #1 characteristic. You have to maintain 100% utilization before you even think about going outside. And if somebody can tell me we're 100% utilized out there in our building department and our DPW right now, I'll accept it. But I'll guarantee you that's not the case, because if you look at the GIS in the vehicles right now and where our inspectors are going and where they're stopping and how long in an 8-hour period, you'll find out that we're not 100% utilized right now. Thank you.
Any further comments from the board? We have a motion by Trustee Domingue, support by trustee Vosberg to approve item 70 as submitted. Clerk Berry, please call the roll. Deputy Clerk Nyza, please call the roll.
Trustee Domingue?
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg?
Aye.
Trustee Joseph?
Aye.
Trustee Anderson?
No.
Treasurer LaFata?
No.
Supervisor Acciavatti?
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Item 8 is the addendum. There are no addendum. Item 9 is public comment. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes. State your name and address for the record. And when you are finished speaking, give the podium a wipe down for us, please.
Okay. Paul Manley, 48112 Fuller Road. I'm interested in that Weber Paddle Park thing that Mr. LaFata was interrupted. I was interested in what you were saying. I'd like you to finish it when we're done, because over $16,000 to remove a pole seems like, wow, excessive. Just my thought on it. That's a lot of money, man. I got a hacksaw if that's
I'll
a
clarify
problem.
for you at the end. You got your facts wrong, but thank you.
Okay.
Any further comments from the public? Mr. Manley, you forgot to wipe down the podium.
Yes. I lost my mind. I'm sorry. I'm used to my wife doing this. Is that evil?
Good evening, Township Board and Chesterfield Township residents. My name is John Spica, and I'm running to be the next treasurer in Chesterfield Township. Chesterfield is my home. I believe in leading by example. I believe in fiscal responsibility, accountability, and transparency, open books and full disclosure, knowing how your tax dollars are being spent. Funding police and fire, making sure our residents have fair and equitable water rates, along with a balanced budget, are my top priorities. I believe that all our township employees should be valued and appreciated and not taken for granted or considered disposable. Chesterfield Township, I hear you. I believe in being an advocate for our seniors and a listening voice in our loving community. I'm pro Second Amendment and Constitution. I believe in people over party. One of my proud moments that I'd like to share with you is being part of the group called Transparent Chesterfield. Go to YouTube and type in Transparent Chesterfield. The videographer in the corner that you don't see at home is brought in every 2 weeks by a bipartisan group, Republicans and Democrats, of individuals, including myself, who pool our money together every 2 weeks so residents of Chesterfield get a clean audio, unedited video of their government in action. Here is an example of listening to what people say, then watching what they do. I say what I mean, and I mean what I say. This is who I am, and I'm asking for your vote on November 3rd. In my opinion, this is what I've learned in the last few months about my opponent and our ego-driven Supervisor Acciavatti. There are stark differences between myself and my opponent. My opponent was recruited by an ego-driven Supervisor Acciavatti to run for the treasurer's seat and take Paul LaFata out. My opponent ran a smear campaign, in my opinion, filled with lies and deception against Paul LaFata, an honest, hardworking, dedicated individual. Fortune 500 companies pay thousands of dollars to have an individual like Mr. LaFata on their team. My opponent would be a rubber stamp candidate for Supervisor Acciavatti. My opponent is bought and paid for by Acciavatti and family, and the proof is in my opponent's campaign contributions. Follow the money. My opponent will say and make up whatever lies she feels will fit the story she wants to tell. My opponent uses buzzwords like lost checks, efficiency, bureaucracy, and technology because she has no plan. I've been told she's gone as far as filing a police report against Mr. LaFata, our current treasurer. I personally had to file last month a cease and desist order against my opponent, at which this time I cannot go into detail. I asked the residents of Chesterfield, is this the type of person you want sitting in the treasurer's office? Not at all. My opponent is playing political games with people's lives. My opponent loyalty lies with Acciavatti and not with the people of Chesterfield. This is her second attempt at running for the treasurer's seat. The last time my opponent ran was against Linda Hartman. Hartman, a respected, dedicated individual in the community who has given so much back to the community. In the end, Linda beat my opponent, and we didn't hear from my opponent for the next 8 years. This is not what I call being involved with your community. I believe that elected officials need to lead by example, and we as residents have a duty and obligation to hold each and every one of our elected officials accountable for their actions or lack of actions. We have 7 days. We are 7 days out from one of the most important elections of our lifetime. Chesterfield Township is on the ballot. Who we are is on the ballot. Right versus wrong is on the ballot. Having elected officials coming to work and doing their job is on the ballot. Not having a rubber stamp candidate like my opponent in the treasurer's office is on the ballot. Not letting Supervisor Acciavatti steal the treasurer's seat by his handpicked candidate who is bought and paid for by Acciavatti and family is on the ballot. Safeguarding the people's money so the supervisor doesn't have an open checkbook on each and every one of our elected officials are on a job performance review. We, the people, have the power to show our elected officials that we mean business, and the shenanigans going on in the township are coming to a quick end. We have the power by our own individual vote to clean house,
10
drain
seconds.
the township, and elect candidates that will put people first. We have the power to hire and fire.
5.
This is our time. Vote November 3rd and fire Clerk Barry,
Thank you.
Supervisor
Any-
Acciavatti, and
Any further comments? Thank you, you're all done. And everyone got to follow the same rules, Mr. Spica. Any further public comment?
Kathy Elliott. I have lived here for nearly 20 years. I actually don't have notes because I thought a week before the election we would probably try to keep it very positive. I thought that was very nice of you today, Mr. Joseph. I also want to thank this board for the hard work that they've done. I have addressed the smear campaign that my opponent, Mr. Spica, has continuously ran against me. Mr. LaFata, the reason why I filed a police report was because you put out an email to the entire leaders of the township, including the police department, and chief of police was CC'd on that, talking about the mafia and me. It's inappropriate. You talk about being a husband. You talk about having a family. I have a husband. I have children. The other day, my daughter, because of what you and Mr. Spica have done to me over and over and over again, all right, my daughter couldn't get a hold of me. And she said, Mom, for the first time in my life, I said, is my mom okay? Because we leave our doors open. My husband has installed cameras around our house because of what you've done. I think that you are better than that. I don't think that you realize that when you do things like that, that it hurts people, that it hurts my family. I'm a resident, you're a resident. When we talk about my relationship with Mrs. Hartman, all right, she knows how much I respect her. There's a picture on Anchor Bay Chamber of Commerce of her and I speaking that was taken at the Weber Paddle Park and just recently. And I showed it to my daughters, my husband, and one of my daughters started to cry, and she said, Mom, that speaks volumes. I was listening, Mrs. Hartman was talking, and never once in 2012 did either of us ever speak negatively towards the other. She ran a great campaign, she's a hard worker, and she does a good job, and I've always respected her for that. I have also had to hire an attorney because of a false filing by Mr. Spica. He is in search of the person that has been distributing a piece from 2018. I think that Mr. Spica knows who that person is. I believe that there are pictures laying around that people have taken because this person hasn't been shy about going out on people's porches. And I think Mr. Spica needs to deal with that and not try to put it on me. The hit pieces between this board during the primary had nothing to do with me. There is one piece that I did put out that I know that Mr. LaFata repeatedly talks about lost checks, about bureaucracy. The things that I list on that, called my plan, which I had before Mr. Spica had a plan, is about things that this community has expressed. These are things that upset people that you see on the internet. I address them. This was not a personal attack against you, Mr. LaFata. It was not a personal attack against the people of the treasurer's office. I understand some of the things that you've said, and I've also talked with some of the folks in your staff. At the last board meeting, you talked about the reason why checks were lost. Those are things that need to be addressed and that have to have answers, not excuses. Now, I'm not here to hurt you, and I've said that over and over again. I would never do anything like talk about the mafia or my heritage in it. It's not funny. It's not. It's disappointing because I think you're better than that. I know you are. Thank you.
Please wipe down the podium if you could for me. Any further comments from the public? Turn your mic on. Red's good. Go.
Michelle Merriweather, 52860 Muirfield Drive. I felt the need to come up today, as Kathy has stated, we are 1 week before the election. And it's been an interesting election, I would say. I have tried personally myself to run a very clean campaign, although there's been attacks that have been leveled against me for being a woman, for being a first-timer, and even attacks leveled against me because of the color of my skin. I did not appreciate it. But most importantly, what I want to bring up to the board today is, Mr. Joseph, I thought your comments to me at the last meeting, at the end of the meeting, although you were not saying my name, you were alluding to me, I thought it was childish. I thought it was not necessary. And most importantly, because viewing that the agenda was about to close, you knew I had no response, so I felt it was an abuse of power. I did not believe that it was necessary. So I just wanted to state that I do hope that moving forward between now and the election day, that everyone could try to find within their space to run a clean campaign. We are all members of Chesterfield. We all want the same thing. We want sidewalks, we want clean water, we want a clean environment, we want stoplights and traffic lights. We want our people to be able to play outside and be happy. We want the same things. Let's try to not to attack each other and try to work together towards a common good. Every time someone does something, it doesn't mean that there's an ulterior motive. Sometimes it just means they look at the world a little bit differently than you. So I would ask, moving forward, please respect each other, and most importantly for me, Mr. Joseph, you respect me, and I will give you nothing but the utmost respect for the next 7 days. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the public after we take our time and sanitize? Thank you.
Mike Wharton on Bauer. So with the final week now in the election, it is vitally important that everyone does go out and vote. But something I've seen across the entire nation, which has really disturbed me, was this sort of campaign, multiple campaigns really, but it's just a constant register to vote, go out and vote. It's on social media, go vote, go vote, go vote, go vote. And I feel that now within the Republic there is just a viewpoint that voting is just a statistic. It's not that you're casting a ballot with any real intention anymore. And so my big worry, especially within this township as well, is that we don't have an electorate that's going to know what they're voting on. They'll see a name, they'll just pick that. I mean, when you look out on the streets, how many signs are out there? Everywhere. It's almost as much as the trash. This is not a spite against anyone. It is just a part of the American political system. But at some point in time, it becomes so exhausting, so overwhelming. How many times have you turned on the TV and have you not seen a Trump or Biden or James or Peters ad on the TV? It's becoming so much more so you forgot what show you're watching. We are entering a time frame now in this final week where we are at uncertainty. We are so endowed in this partisan, attacking, committed foresight of one party versus the other that we're missing the forest through the trees. To be honest, I still haven't done my homework on the nonpartisan section or the judicial section, which is what I'm going to be planning on doing this week, which is why I'm waiting till election day to vote. But even then, I'll still feel like I'm not informed enough on every single choice on that ballot. When you cast a ballot, it is a right that has been fought over many, many years, decades, over several centuries. Not everyone has ever had that right to vote. But in that process as well, we come to what we are at right now in 2020 with the people who will have that right to vote, and I feel many people are squandering that. So much so that, I hate to say this, I'd rather people not vote than make an ill-informed vote. This is vitally important for the standing of the Republic, that it is up to the voters. In his farewell address, President Eisenhower made a statement that often gets overlooked because people primarily focused on what he says in the military-industrial complex, but immediately after that, he said that the only way any of this is going to work is with an alert and knowledgeable citizenry. And I am afraid to say that I do not see that in this country, nor do I see that coming about in the future. But I am always hopeful and optimistic in that format. I am an optimist, but I'm a realist. What we have the potential to have a much better electorate. But if you want better leaders, you've got to be a better citizen. We need to have, and COVID aside, we can't blame the social distancing, but before this whole crisis, barely anyone would come to these meetings unless there was a hot topic issue. Barely anyone was getting involved within their community, whether it be here in the township or in the county or within state politics. Yet everyone wants to have their opinion on the presidential election. In the end of everything, it is vitally important that everyone realize that the elections are more than just about who goes for the White House. Politics is more than just about what the two parties in DC are fighting about. And government is more than just about what happens in Washington. We have much more to discuss, to debate, to enlighten each other with, but if it's all just going to be about who gets to be king of a pile of rubble or queen of the ashes, then what is the point of government, politics, voting, elections, if it's nothing but squabbling, nothing but attacking each other until there's nothing left worth claiming as your throne? There is a difference between the democratic processes within the Republic and what we escaped from so many years ago with past governments. We can do better, we must do better, and I believe that we will do better in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the public? Any further comments from the public? Maybe While he's cleaning up the podium, if you stand up, I'll see if anyone's coming up before I move it up to the board. Let's move up to the board. Trustee Demink.
Good luck, good night.
Trustee Vosberg. Oh, yeah, Trustee Vosberg.
I would agree.
Trustee Anderson.
I think I just heard at the podium, probably one of the true future leaders among us speak. And I had some other things to say, but I'll probably just, my two cohorts down there, I'll say, wish everyone a good night, make sure you vote if you haven't. And I think this board expires, the tenure of this board expires November 20th, so we'll have one more chance to visit us, and we'll find out in about a week who's going to occupy these chairs. Good night, everybody.
Trustee Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Just going down the list, the first speaker spoke about the interest in the Weber Paddle Park. I think Treasurer LaFata will probably address those, as will Supervisor Acciavatti, but just from a procedural standpoint, Trustee Vosberg was 100% correct. Any board member has the ability to remove any item on the agenda from the consent agenda to allow that consideration to be considered separately. So when Treasurer LaFata, I'm assuming when Treasurer LaFata was giving explanation for that, the point of order was correct in my opinion, which was to say I'm okay with the debate, but it's not the appropriate place. You have to remove that, and then we go into a different sort of round of discussion. Treasurer LaFata elected not to do that, and so we voted on it minus that debate. He can address your question in his comments. Treasurer candidates Speaker and Elliott, much of the back and forth really doesn't impact me, with one exception. That has to do with Transparent Chesterfield. Transparent Chesterfield is, as Mr. Speaker pointed out, a group of bipartisan individuals, myself, Mr. Speaker, Ms. Jones, Ms. Hartman, and Trustee Anderson. The real catalyst for that actually leads into some of the other things that were discussed earlier by a couple of us. There were individuals that came to the podium who were working with particular candidates, very close to particular candidates. So they came into the meeting, they passed out propaganda, they went deliberately, right, to everybody in the room, and then they sat in the front chair, took pictures of us, mocked us, and then our microphones went out. Our microphones went out when it was time for us to be able to rebut that. So Mr. Speaker spoke that night, and his comments were not heard. So there was a group that got together and we do pay every board meeting. I received a text tonight that the township streaming is not viable, and Transparent Chesterfield is. So it's imperative that we have the ability to let our residents know what's going on, and also to be fair. There's no editing with this video. It goes from gavel to gavel, covers all the speakers and all the comments made by all the board members. The speaker that I'm talking about is very close to you, Ms. Elliott, very close to Clerk Berry, and I'd like to address a few of the comments made. Ms. Merriweather, I was very proud of the campaign we've run, and I'm very proud of the campaign that you've run. I don't think I've seen anything negative out of your camp. I've seen you engage young people, some of the most talented kids that we have in our community. You've embraced and engaged them in a way that is very good. There's nothing but positive things to say about your campaign. If I'm privileged and honored enough to be one of the top 4 vote getters, and you are as well, I think it would be historic for a number of reasons, but the things that you've brought to the podium and to your discussions on Facebook have been extraordinary. They're excellent. I have no negative of any kind. In fact, one of the posts that I saw that troubled me, something I reached out to a few other board members and our police chief, had to do with threats that you'd received. You mentioned on Facebook that you had received threats against your person and your property. And then in a few threads, I noticed the same individual who was not too kind to you was also the same maniac that was involved with all of the ugly things involving Treasurer LaFata and myself. So you're in good company there. The guy's really quite dangerous. And shortly after he made his rounds here at the podium, I received an anonymous letter in my mailbox in the township indicating that he had a domestic violence, that there was a confirmed PPO that had been authorized by a judge as a result of threats and violence. So this is not a great person, in my opinion. He's a good friend of yours. He talks about being in your home and praising God and all of these other despicable things that he does to everybody else on the campaign trail, which isn't nice. There were some despicable pieces that were sent out about us, including calling Treasurer LaFata a traitor. Horrific, terrible, inexcusable. Clerk Berry was linked to those, and she said in this chair that she wasn't going to comment on any of those because this is the people's house and that politics is beneath her and so forth. But then when the township employees organized and sent out a piece talking about their experience with their boss, she phoned in through her deputy clerk and read into the board minutes threats to anybody who was a part of that. And you know, that's interesting. That's interesting. The person neck deep in the swamp and generating all of this ugliness, and he's done that to Miss Merriweather. I watched it online. Thought she handled herself beautifully. She had a number of people around her that said, no, absolutely not. You don't get to do that. That's not what our campaign is about. So of all the comments that have been made about me or to me, I'd like to find out more. If you're willing, I'd love to talk to you about this concern that you raised tonight about some things that you didn't take from me, because I'm being completely honest with you. I found your campaign to be very refreshing and very much appreciative. You've done some great things with some very good people in our community and engaged them, people that, best I can tell, that you didn't know before the campaign, people that you met on the campaign trail, that you engaged in a solution-focused way. That's admirable, and that's somebody I'd like to work with. So troubles me a bit to hear that you're upset with me or frustrated with something I said, and I'd like to know more about that. But in terms of the rest of the race and the rest of the races, tremendously proud to live in this community. Guy who comes to a lot of meetings, Mr. Grievous, is running. He was on this board many years ago. I got a call from somebody that lives near him that said, hey, I was out and Grievous dropped your name, and what can you tell me about this Grievous guy? And I said, nothing but good things. He's a great guy. It's just the way the trustee race has gone. I don't know all the candidates, but I'm very, very proud of the race that we've run. Former Treasurer Hartman, who's interested in serving on this board again as a trustee, has run an admirable campaign. She's only talked about what she brings to the township. There's no shadow campaigns, there's no ugly hit pieces or anything that she's involved with, and all the people that are around her campaign are solid. And Ms. Jones is the same way. Just a very honorable person, and the party is irrelevant to me. The party is irrelevant to me. Something Mr. Wharton said that I think is true, and it's been true if you study politics in this community. Sometimes the presidential coattails can be extremely long, and a lot of people don't look down ballot. Typically the trustee race is on the back of the ballot, and a lot of times there's a lot of straight party voting, and sometimes the best candidate doesn't always win. it just is unfortunate that way. I wish we were the Township Charter Act were changed and we just took the top 4 vote getters minus party, cut it down to 8 at the primary, and then the top 4 independent of party would be a more fair way, and a way of harvesting the best talent. But I'm proud of the trustees' candidates. I've said nothing negative about any of them, and I've received nothing negative about any of them. And if I'm out and somebody asks me about it, Ms. Merriweather, you in particular, most impressed with you and your campaign and the people you brought around your campaign. The treasurer's race is particularly ugly, but this police report, there's no threat that can be there's no threat that can be implied when there's nothing directed at you. So communication between board members that gets leaked to you is unfortunate, because when you're at the police department absorbing police resources 2 weeks after Ms. Merriweather brings to the board a discussion about women being approached in a Meyer parking lot and questions whether or not there's resources sufficient to address that, and our police are now assigning detectives and to deal with political nonsense, it's indicative of the things that Mr. Wharton was talking about. And how far do we go to achieve a seat at this table? How far do you go? Because in the end, I'd like to have your honor and your dignity and your self-respect, but if you pull out all stops and the goal is just to get on the podium, what do you really, what is the end prize? To rule over something that has been virtually destroyed? So it's disappointing. I'll be glad that next week it's over. And I look forward to the outcome that the voters decide. If I'm fortunate enough to be here, I look to work cooperatively with anybody else that the people decide are worthy of being up here. So thank you to all.
Treasurer LaFata.
Well, first let me answer Mr. Manley's question. The important part is that the township spent a lot of money on Weber Paddle Park. And currently, there's $168,000 out in grants. They date back all the way to December 21st, 2015. There was a $10,000 grant and a $44,000 grant on 2 different resolutions from the DNR. And then on March 21st, 2016, when Mr. Speaker called and asked about $16,000 because it was a large number, I checked. We have not collected dime one on any of those grants yet. And I'm assuming that the people that came forward and asked to expend this money are going to be responsible to collect it, because when the grant was issued, the last one, there's a lot of stipulations that it had to have a fishing dock and it had to have a bathroom and all this other stuff. I haven't seen I haven't seen a revision and an amendment to the grant. So that just makes me nervous when we expend dollars and I'm not sure that we're going to collect them. So I can't totally answer your question because I don't know. All I can tell you though is the telephone pole removal was $6,500, not $16,000. That was one of the notes that Josh put in there as an approved change order. So I probably can't answer all your questions. I know we've expended a lot of money, but I can tell you to date we haven't received any back as far as grant payments. And if we have anything to, any more fulfillment to that piece of property to collect the grants. Second issue is it's sad that somebody has to come to the podium when they're not even involved, but there were things that happened in the primary that was really out of character. When I ran in the primary, there was nothing that was negative. But what came out in the primary is there was this thing called a report card. That wasn't too flattering. It wasn't too flattering, but at the same time, I saw somebody thank Mr. LaCarey for his efforts. So I don't know why you would have done that, but, and then there was another article before the primary called Chesterfield Deserves Better, that came out, okay? So Treasurer LaFada wrote a email to our supervisor. And it was like a performance review that I've written for hundreds of people before. And that email went to our supervisor. Evidently, he decided that he wanted to share it with you, and you forwarded it. And I don't have a problem with that, but once you forward it, it's public knowledge. So because people like you take things and twist them, that's why I sent it to everybody, so that they would have a copy, so they could see it before somebody came to the podium and twisted what was on those pieces of paper. And what was on those pieces of paper that mentioned you, and you only, was the fact that I told him when I was working and I was making a mortgage payment and a house payment and a car payment and everything else, I couldn't afford to give up my position to be the treasurer of Chesterfield Township. It just didn't financially work out with me and putting 3 children through college. So the only question and the only thing that you were named in is, how can you afford to give up your lucrative position right now to take that position, to take the treasurer's position? That was the only involvement. And I don't know how you twist all of this to say I threatened your life, because the only thing that I put in there is I'm very proud of my Sicilian ancestry, like other people are proud of their Irish ancestry, their African-American ancestry. And the only thing is the bottom line on it, and the summation of this, is I'm a very stubborn person. And you have to be. When you're in the business like I was, to solve issues, you have to be stubborn. And you have to be persistent. And that's what I try to do here in the township. Continuous improvement, solve issues, you have to be persistent. You can't give up. And I don't know how this, in fact, you have to be so persistent in the outside world that you think out of the box, and if it doesn't exist, you invent it. That's how persistent I've been. So I don't know how you link this that was sent to Supervisor Acciavatti to any threat to you, Miss Elliott, because you really twisted it out of context. And on top of it, you're a Second Amendment proponent. I really love the First Amendment because I've done a lot of writing, and the First Amendment protects me because what I put on a piece of paper, I have backup information and truth for every bit of it. It's either a research document or it's some documentation within the township. So I don't know how you feel that you were threatened, but your name was barely mentioned. And that's the only question. And I don't know how you and Supervisor Acciavatti got together so that when you went to the police station, Supervisor Acciavatti, who never commented or never responded, said that you should go to the police station. It says right, it's here it's on your words on the police report, quoted. It's here. It's here. So I did nothing undermined before the primary when I was knocked out. I didn't do anything undermining to you afterwards, but when I write a performance review like I've done before for our supervisor, because kind of opened the door when he put in there in the voice that Chesterfield deserves better, which means they deserve better than Paul LaFada for the treasurer. I feel that I can respond to that because of my First Amendment rights, which I did, and I sent him an email, which for some reason, like I said, got twisted by, I guess, the supervisor and you for some kind of bodily harm. Basically, all it says here is that I'm proud of my Sicilian heritage and I'm a stubborn person. And if you can't live with that, I'm afraid of what's going to happen when a resident comes up in front of you and confronts you and asks you some really, tough questions for your answer. Are you gonna go, and ask the supervisor to answer them for you? This is about what it's gonna happen, because basically, she's looking for sympathy. And there's no sympathy, because it seems like politics is a very dirty thing, which I never thought would happen in Chesterfield. And it just so happened, it happened to me. And I don't have a problem with that. I can live with it. I can go back to my very nice life. But the only thing that's gonna suffer is the residents will suffer. The employees are gonna suffer, because they don't really know what they're gonna get. And that's why I put another opinion letter in the Voice, to know who you're gonna vote for. Because you really gotta know that person. And when that person can be influenced by another person to do something, that's kind of an insight of what's gonna happen at the board table. And there's one other thing I'd like to say. I'd like to thank Mr. Joseph for the kind thoughts, but there's one other thing. I celebrate October 27th every year. On October 27th, 1968, I was reported as being KIA in Vietnam. And for 52 years, I celebrate October the 27th. And today I have to be at a board meeting, and I'm not really celebrating being here. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Manley on the Weber Paddle Park. It's kind of ironic that, that you pick probably from day one the project that ripped this board apart. That $16,000 is the final estimate. So there are construction estimates, and we talked a little bit about this last meeting. There's a bid with unit prices, and those unit prices have quantities associated with them. And every month or every 45 days, pursuant to the contract document in the construction, pay requests get generated through our engineering department and through the contractor. So that $16,000 payment is a pay request on that contract. The attempt to derail, stop, and not get that park built, it was bewildering to me when I walked in the door. Treasurer Hartman at the time, Trustee Joseph, Trustee Anderson, worked hard to get us in the conversation for the first time in 20 years. So I was actually pretty proud and happy that all these grants are getting used around the country or around the state for these amazing parks, and utilizing DNR trust fund monies, getting it for grants for sidewalks. You know how many's come to Chesterfield? Zero in long time. So I was very encouraged and very supportive of that board unanimously pushing that project. But right when I walked in the door, it became a very, and I never understood it, and to this day I still don't understand it. I will never ever understand what the controversy is for a grant through the DNR trust fund that they're a finicky bunch. They have to be. They got their own rules to follow to make sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. That $265,000 will come. That $265,000 has been applied for, and that project is going to be built with a donation from an amazing philanthropist in our township and a substantial DNR trust fund grant. Now, I don't know why this board collectively and this community collectively is not proud of that. I can't quite figure that out, why there's an active campaign against that. And not only against that, but against sidewalks and other things. But that's there must have been a little bit of miscommunication on that piece. Mr. Spica had two comments that I normally would want to just ignore because I don't think they're worthy of any kind of legitimate discussion. And I do realize that you are brand spanking new to the township, and you've ran for many political offices across Metro Detroit. You mentioned transparent Chesterfield, and I've gone along with this narrative for long enough. It's time to say it for what it is. It's a political group formed right before the primary by candidates running for Chesterfield Township office. Don't have any problem with it. I actually think it's great, like the man doing it. However, this is a campaign event. This is a campaign-related political operation. No ifs, ands, or buts. Why isn't it shown on campaign finance reports if it's so transparent? So I do have some issues with that, and I know, folks are running on that. I have a concern with it. Another thing that Mr. Spica said was, quote, ego-driven leadership. And the fact that this conversation was started by Treasurer LaFata, I'm gonna finish it, or I'm gonna put in my 2 cents. And I do believe this with my heart. It was an honor to serve with you, and I'm proud of everything that we got accomplished. I think we look back, besides all the stress and the gray hair and how hard it was on me and what it did to this board, rip us apart. I think you're gonna be proud, pretty proud of a lot that we've done. From the budget, from the investments, from the grants, from the memorial wall out back, to maybe someday even the parks and the improvements. But that quote that Mr. Spica said was ego-driven leadership. I did receive an email from Treasurer LaFata. And frankly, I wasn't threatened by it because I've been dealing with this type of bullying for quite some time. I'm not concerned of myself. However, I was very concerned, and I still am to this day, that email had an attachment on it that was a campaign piece. No ifs, ands, buts, or questions. There is no campaigning with public assets. There is no campaigning with public dollars, period. So the fact that that was there, of course I'm concerned. It is not something we should be doing here. You shouldn't be campaigning from this dais. No ifs, ands, buts, questions. It happens every day. I'm hoping the next board fixes that and ends it. But that is, I could see how some people could read this email or the dozens other ones that I've had throughout the last 4 years. Some of them I have forwarded along to the proper authorities. Some are our HR department, and some are higher up. Does it rise to the level of where I was worried for myself? No. Does it rise to the level where I thought it was inappropriate? Absolutely. And it's unfortunate that we're down to that, because at the end of the day, I am very proud of this entire board of what we did. These pieces come out against me as well. Another one that I think, if you've watched these meetings, that gets under my skin, because I don't participate. No ifs, ands, buts, or questions. There are no quid pro quos under this operation, period. There are no trading for votes, especially, there are no trading for votes at this level. That type of stuff happens at the state level. That type of stuff happens at the federal level when you're fighting for projects for your township or your district. At the state level, if you are going to trade a vote and insinuate I am participating in that type of frickin' nonsense, you're gonna get me fighting back over it. That ain't happening. I will negotiate and compromise inside that item. If you want to talk about a sidewalk item or a sidewalk concept and try to make that specific item right, I'm all ears. But if you want to talk about some of the nonsense that's gone on here, like trading a vote for X project for a vote for Y project, it's got no piece in township government, period. And that piece was put out against me. So it goes all ways. I for one would be very happy when this election gets over for our country, for our state, and especially our community. We can get back to hopefully the normalness, and hopefully it's not what we've had to deal with the last 4 years of serving our residents with honesty, with integrity. You can have differences of opinion. That's what the process is for. Nobody has more than David and I, and no one's a better debater than David. That's government. Those are sharing your ideas. That's campaigns. That's sharing the vision. We just lose track when we start using half-truths, lies, and trying to shove a narrative in that's very, very false. So I'm hopeful that whatever board's sitting up here continues the progress that this board's made, but maybe in a more cooperative, honest, in an honest way. It'll serve our residents much, much better. Our next board meeting is Wednesday, November the 10th at 7 p.m. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion by trustee Vosberg, support by trustee Demink to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
By saying no. We are adjourned.